Hello, welcome to The Bridge. The Bridge, we care less about where someone has arrived and more about how they made sense of the journey. This is space for real conversation about opportunity, preparation, access, and responsibility, especially for young people like you and I. People who want to compete globally, but don't always know how the path actually works. Today with me is Haris. Now, Haris, my brother, thank you so much for joining me. Before I introduce you to our audience, I would love for you to introduce yourself in your own words.
Okay. Well, you guys all know my name. I'm 18. Can you see me? Sorry. I'm 18. I'm an A-level graduate from Fez International School. I did O-level at Fez Boys, and I'm currently on a gap year working at TANSAF in the senior cohort, coordinating like all the peer tutoring, helping people like prepare for different things like the SAT and Cambridge and their A levels. And yeah, I'm super into like debate, especially like with the WSTC style. Although I guess now I'm going to transition into British parliamentarian. Since I'm going to college, and I like visual art, like drawing, painting, and even though I'm not very good at painting because I started only like 2 years ago, and I like assisting people with college applications, which is primarily also what we do at TANSAF, and even what I do in my free time. And it's nice meeting you guys today.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Well done. And just to ask a follow-up question on that, if you had to describe yourself without mentioning any institutions like TANSAF or, you know, your age or any titles, who are you without, who is her?
Well, I think it was pretty laid out in the Instagram post for when I
Mm-hmm.
got in, but essentially, I think I am authentic very much. That's like one of the most important things to me, especially for someone like me. I think it's authenticity is super important. Creative, I think that's one of the things that really pull people to people really value in me and want to have me in their room for. And I'm very like open-minded, I'm very much into like worldly things. Like yeah, in the sense that like I want everyone to feel included, and I'm open to many different ideas and lifestyles.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Now, I want to take a moment to properly introduce you
Okay.
to our audience. um, Harriet is a very, very authentic, very humble person I
Huh?
know. Very, very smart. But I think from my perspective, what makes him unique in his own journey, it's his discipline, his curiosity, and his long-term preparation to meet opportunity. Because I went to the same school with Harris from one. I was
Mm.
informed to you from one at the time, but I would say, apart from being a Tanzanian student admitted to Yale, one of the most competitive schools in the world, you have always been someone who went out of your way to participate in programs like
Yeah.
the Yale Young African Scholars, the Yale Young
Represent.
Global Scholars, and hand in hand, you're also able to you're also able to represent Tanzania in global debates. So you can see that
Yeah.
you've done so much in your 18 years of life. And all this excellence, it's not something that you just woke up, but it's something that you built
Yeah.
over time, isn't it? And this is what makes you very, very powerful in the sense that how were you intentional to build such a life for yourself? This is what takes us to the bridge today. How were you able to navigate your life to get to where you are today? Now,
Okay.
to start with the first question. Start with our first question. What does opportunity mean to you? And what did you have to unlearn to believe you deserved it?
So opportunity. I think for one, opportunity doesn't isn't obvious. It has to be one. For me, it means something that you want and that is not necessarily feasible, but attainable. And I think that the most important thing when trying to like access opportunities is to one, just find out how the opportunity came to be and how someone like you can access that opportunity. Obviously, it's not available for everybody. Not every opportunity is available for everybody. But I think simply being able to know what it is that you can have and then really choosing that and working on that specifically. I would say a good example is, I knew that I wanted to do summer programs. They're great on your apps and, stuff like that. However, most summer programs in the world are require you to pay at least like $5,000. That's excluding like travel costs. But I just looked for what works for me, what offers scholarships, and then just like trying to, even though I didn't necessarily have the best activities. I mean, in that I've been to summer programs where people performed surgery and have done research for like Duke University or something. But I also got in because I was just able to like really capitalize on what I have to access those opportunities. So, it's less it's like it's things, it's not necessarily about whether you think you can achieve it or not, but if it is like within your realm of reality, then I think it's possible. And yeah, that's what I think opportunity is, or at least what it means for me.
Wow, what a powerful statement you've shared. I think it goes down to the theme whereby if you desire something, you should always go and
Yeah.
out of your reach. And you've been someone who you've been able to understand that you want to do something and utilize summer programs, and you went out of your way to find something that is within your reach. Now, within this understanding, where do you think most students misunderstand when it comes to opportunity?
Okay, something that most students misunderstand is that, just give me a second.
Take your time.
I think what most students misunderstand is that it needs to be perfect. So I remember when I finished the Yale Young African Scholars, a bunch of my friends, I applied to YYGS, and then when I was selected, a bunch of people from the group chat were like, "Wait, how could you be selected? Isn't it only for people who are juniors and less?" Because the criteria on the page says that you have to be a junior going less. A junior is your second last year of high school. You have to be a junior or less, but I applied as a senior and got in. And then I told them that unless the application specifically stated that one, seniors can't apply, or the application would have blocked your application as a senior, I don't think you necessarily should have made that assumption simply because of what the page said. And so many people from YYAS weren't able to attend YYGS because they just because they assumed that everything had to like be laid out. And so yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect. Is as long as there's a way, it should be doable. And so that's something they need to unlearn, or they misunderstand that it needs to be perfect. No, anything is possible. Even if you're competing against someone who's like been to the who's like a legacy or something, like it's possible. Second is that it needs to, like, I feel like, okay, I'm also gonna build on the perfection thing a little more. I remember that
No worries.
I was helping a friend of mine. And they were in a really disadvantaged situation, and they wanted to apply to a school, but the deadline had already passed. Fortunately, the program that they wanted to apply for had like an Instagram, so I reached out to them via the Instagram, and then I berated them until they accepted and let him apply past the deadline. And okay, obviously we don't know if things have turned out great yet or not, but like I'm glad that he was still able to submit his application and that they're going to give it full consideration. And yeah, just like stuff like that. There are many times when things may seem like it's over, but I feel like it's not over until it's literally impossible to do the thing that you need to do. And so students need to understand that, you may think, oh, the deadline's passed, you're never gonna take a look at my application. That's not always the case. Or you can be like, my grades aren't at this level, they'll never consider me. That's not always the case. My grades weren't the best when I applied for like different things, and I got them. So just, it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be you.
Perfect. Well said. Well said. I have one last question because this just brings so much out of you in the sense that you, as much as you're very well driven, but then you make sure that you take people with you. You went out of your way to make sure that you're able to create the space, to provide that same opportunity for your friend who you're helping. What would you say was the price for different opportunities, or for this opportunity specifically, when it comes to, say, Yale?
I think the price maybe would be like peace or like calmness, because when you're someone who is super into this like whole process, applying to different schools, different programs, debating, you're always going to be like vigilant, sort of like there's always going to be like, oh, I can't relax I only get like 2 days off, then I have to like start practicing again for this upcoming tournament. Or maybe that you can't take this trip because maybe that you have to like stay to do this application. There are many times when I've had to like stay home. I've had to miss classes where they taught important topics so that I could finish my application on time. There were times when I had to so for example, for when I was in the national debate team, it was in the 2024 WSDC. The tournament itself was right after the summer program that I was doing, the UWC summer program. So during the summer program, I had to miss some workshops in order to attend the Zoom meetings where we discuss the motions and like arrange our game plan and all that. And so I feel like to me, it's that you're going to sacrifice peace a lot of the time, and maybe it's quite a price to pay, but I think it's kind of sometimes peace is boring. It's kind of overrated. So I guess if you want great, you're just gonna have to get used to like not. Obviously, you do get to rest. Like I'm not saying you never get to rest, but like I think you're always just going to be like active doing something or thinking about something, which that's a choice you can make if you want.
In the sense that if you want to win a race,
Mhm.
you've got to run, like you've got to chase it. Well done. Now let's pull back.
Yeah.
Let's pull back a bit. Let's talk about your journey to Yale. At what point did your journey towards global universities like Yale truly begin? And I'm not talking about when you hit the submit button on the portal, but when did you actually start that internal preparation towards where you're at now?
I remember that I think the first time I ever made that decision was so in Form 2. I remember I was in school, I was just like living life. I was like, yeah, everything's chill, whatever. I used to study, but like I was like, I'm pretty smart. I can do well, and even if I'm not like the top 3 in class, it doesn't really matter. Like that's not really something you have to achieve. You have to aspire for. But then eventually, my ego kind of caught up to me, and then my friends started making fun of me. They're like, "Oh, you think you're so smart, but like, you're not even like the best in class. Meanwhile, other people are working." And so then my Form 2 results came and I had 2 Bs, which sounds like a dream for most people, but that was terrible for me. I had like 2 whole Bs in Form 2. I just like locked in. I was like, yeah. Then in Form 3, I was the best in my grade. Form 4, I was also the best in my grade. And so that managed to like help me become second best throughout the 4 years. It just like evened out my Form 1 and 2 performance. But essentially, I think when I first made the choice to be like, okay, because I remember in the entire Form 3, I would sleep at like 2, 3 a.m. Every like maybe 3 to 4 nights a week, 3 to 5 nights a week. There was even one time I remember I used to do it so much that like there was a day I slept at 3:48 a.m. and I was like, wow, this is early. And then like obviously that's not the healthiest way, but then the point is that like I think when I saw that like people knew that I was smart, but then they made fun of me for underestimating it. And then when I saw that I had potential, but I was just like playing around with it, I was like, okay, yeah, you know what? Maybe these things aren't because at first they were just like, oh, this is never like this is way beyond me. I remember I saw Innocent when he got into Harvard, and I was like, yeah, that's just never gonna happen for me. But then like when I found out that it could, I just needed to decide to. Then I was like, yeah, so Form 3, that's when I decided. That's when I was like taking debate seriously. I was like winning tournaments and all that. Like that's really when this whole journey started, which coincidentally is when they start evaluating your application because it's like 4 years back. So Form 3 is the starting point. So lucky me.
Well, lucky you indeed. And I mean, if you think about it, everything does happen for a reason. Because if you got all A's for Form 2, then
Yeah,
would we be here
probably
today?
wouldn't. Oh my
No one
days.
knows.
Oh my days.
So you had to go through that pain, that change, because people say it's
Mm-hmm.
all about your mindset. You can either choose the pain, change you and build you, or let it distract you. And I think you choose the latter, which is amazing. Now, talking about grades, to just continue to build onto that. We often see students obsessed with grades. And I think both you and I have been on the same path before. We're always very focused on getting the best grades, now, but then
Mm-hmm.
in reality, there's so much more to what makes the strongest candidate than grades. How should students realistically think about grades in relation to everything else, like as a system, in order to succeed
Okay.
in such environments?
Students, first of all, grades are important, And I think everyone can agree with that.
Yeah, very true.
And grades, you should always be on top of your grades. Like you may think that, like, I don't know, oh, it's just a few B's, like I'm still the top of my class anyway. No, you're competing with people who have never tasted a B in their entire life. And so yeah, get good grades. However, it is important to remember that those grades will ultimately, they won't necessarily get you in, they'll just get you in the pool, if that makes sense. Because, like, without the good grades, you will be in the pool, but not really as a competitor. With the good grades, you will be in the pool, but just as a competitor. But to stand a chance of winning, that's where you need to be more than just your grades. Now, obviously, I know that when you're in like a nectar school, especially these top nectar schools like Feza Boys, Canossa, or St. Francis, there's not really much more opportunity beyond just your grades. And I think that there are ways for your grades to also mean more than just like you passing. I think even things simply as like helping everyone academically, maybe trying to set up like study groups, doing all that, taking some initiative to make your grades not just about you passing, but about like people passing. It really shows like how like maybe you can be involved in how you're like involved in your community, and how even though you're limited as to what you can do, with the limits, you still are doing stuff to help the community that you're in, which is your grade, your class. So I would say that, look at your grades more so just as like a way for you to enter the pool. But if you really want to stand a chance to win, as usual, be more than just your grades.
To just build on to that, because as you said, your grades, it's like your grades, it gives you the ticket to compete. Like, talk to me about the invisible work. What part of your preparation mattered immensely, but would never show up on a resume or a transcript? What did you do behind closed doors?
Well,
We don't
one,
get to see.
building mental fortitude. Like, all my days, I remember there was a time, it got to a point where I was so like, it was so stressful. Like, even though debate is my top activity, like I do it a lot. Like I'm in, like, I was in the national team, whatever. But it got to a point where I got kind of, I wouldn't describe it as an anxiety attack, but I kind of got like an episode of just like hyperventilating and crying because I was stressed about the upcoming tournament, and I had to balance that with like this other program that I was doing, the UWC program that I was doing. And I was just like wondering, like, how can I do both things? Because there is like in these programs, it's not like you're just there and like you just attend, like you have like a project you have to work on, or like presentations and stuff. And so it's just like, so even though I did have an episode, ultimately, I rose above it, and my mom helped talk me out of it. So I would say mental fortitude, just like being able to find your way through tough situations like that, where you just feel like emotionally or mentally you cannot handle the weight. It's just like that. Or even, and I feel like another time when like mental fortitude really helped me was in like when during that phase where I was like like super locked in, like in form 3, and form 4. I remember it was like Tuesday, we'd come back from prep, everyone's like laughing, we're keying, chilling, and then everyone goes to sleep at 10:30 p.m. and then you have to, like, that's when you have to continue studying then. So then just like, and then you'll find yourself, maybe you're talking to your friends and you're sat on your bed and you're about to fall asleep and you're like, wait, no, that was not the plan for today. So you need to be able to build yourself in a way that you can just be like, okay, you know what, it's fine. It's whatever. Like, we'll just go through this and then, it will come out in the end. So, just like one, being able to handle tough situations where maybe you're having an episode, but also two, being able to stick to the plan and not your mood. Yeah, that's also something you're gonna need help with. So just like really building the resilience for those kinds of things. Because, and the thing is, it's gonna take a lot of sacrifice. Sometimes you're gonna have to, like, you wanna go on this outing, but you have a meeting with your coach. Or you wanna go on this trip, but you have to, like, you have an application. I remember we went to Arusha and we went to, like, we were supposed to have fun as like a family trip, but I spent the entire time doing my applications, and it was like, okay, like I just had to. And yeah, I'm not saying sacrifice everything, but when it is the time to sacrifice, you need to know that in that period, nothing else matters. So yeah, mental fortitude, just be able to make those choices.
To maintain that focus, isn't it? And it's nice. It's nice to see how grounded you are. Is there anything specific that kept you grounded? What helped you to stay
Mm,
grounded? Because I know you mentioned your mom, about your
yeah,
mom, and when your
I think
experience.
for me, this is gonna sound weird, but it's sort of like my ego. I've always just felt as though like though we got to a point where I was just like and I've told my friends this, like I am not going to an Ivy League school. Like I genuinely just said like maybe I don't care what happens. Like I am going to go to like either Yale or Harvard or Cornell or something. Like I was just because like the thing is I knew people who've done less than me have done those things. And I was just like, why can't I? There's literally nothing that's stopping me from doing that. And so like that just like, so then whenever I'm just like feeling sleepy, I'm like, wait, no, like that's not what we're doing. Like and when you really think about like how big of a thing it is, like going to like a great school, and obviously success is possible regardless of the school you go to. I'm not trying to diss on like, state schools or like any school in like your own country or whatever. But I remember my aunt said this when she found out I got in. She was like, "Yes, success is possible anywhere, but when you go to these schools, it's like you've already done 90% of the work towards becoming successful. So now all you have to do is put your 10% in. Just like do your study, and the internship opportunities will be flooding your way. Job opportunities will be coming your way. Though people will be fighting to get you. And so it's like, obviously you'd have to work a little harder if you went to like a normal school, but yeah, I just wanted that for myself because I was like, I deserve it. Like, and I can, and it's possible. So yeah. So just like, yeah, I'd say my ego really kept me grounded. I was just like, there's no way this is not happening. Come on. Are we serious?
Well, that's amazing to see. One thing, I think it's quite inspiring to see and hear this coming from you, because this same drive is what people like Thomas Edison, or Ford at the time, that constant mindset that I'm not going to settle for less, which it's amazing. Now, Haris, you are a high achiever, and one thing for sure is that high achievers often hide the heavy lifting, the late night sleeps, the sacrifices you made, the work you put in. Now, are there any fears? What fears followed you quietly through this journey, even while you are succeeding? Like, what is the pressure you guys rarely talk about that we don't see?
I think for one, it's a big fear, I would say, is thinking that, okay, even if this is possible, let's say I do achieve all of these things, is this really what's going to make me happy? Or is this really what is my life's calling? Or whatever is the case. And while yeah, at first it can be just like, is this really the thing? I think ultimately it's not, you're not, these things aren't what's going to make you happy. I think simply they're just going to build you into someone who can bring that happiness for yourself. Like I do think that by getting accepted to Yale and then going to a school where future Nobel laureates, entrepreneurs, and whatever are gonna go to, I'm truly learning to give myself what I deserve and to find a way to make myself happy. Like I've always wondered, like, oh, I remember when I first discovered debate, and then I was like, I saw the national team. I was like, wow, these guys are amazing and I really want to be in their position. And then I got to their position, which was something I never thought was possible. I was like, wow, am I really happy here? And I found that when I just chose to focus on like the great moments, like that's when I was really happy. And so the thing I would say is just like, don't worry about whether this thing is what's going to make you happy or not. You just need to learn to be happy as you are and like in all your states and regardless of what you do. And doing these things is simply just going to like facilitate, it's kind of like how people say money doesn't buy happiness or whatever, but money does facilitate happiness and it's like easier for you. It creates environments where you can be happy. And so, don't focus on whether this will make you happy or not, but just understand that once you get there, it is very easy for you to be happy. And, ultimately, once you do get there, you still have a choice. Like, ultimately up to you. You can decline your offer to go to Harvard if you want. And if you, because at least you know now that, like, this is what I'm capable of. And, like, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but, like, yeah, that's essentially it. I would say big fear of mine was just, like, whether the choices I'm making are actually going to result in fulfillment or are just like for some form of academic validation or something. I don't know. But I think I'm fulfilled.